RA, in association with ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.
If you've watched Citgo racing to the Kentucky Derby this spring, you've already seen this year's Derby winner.
Empire Maker in front. Pace World regaining the lead. Buddy Gill takes a narrow advantage.
The question is, which horse is it? The heavy favorite, Empire Maker, or his stablemate, Peace Rules? 10 Most Wanted, the tenacious Buddy Gill, or could the roses go to a lesser-known contender just waiting to blossom? What fate awaits them as the Visa Triple Crown begins? Up next, a look back at the paths each contender took to get to Louisville and their prospects in the world's greatest horse race, the 129th Kentucky Derby. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Triple Crown special as we begin Kentucky Derby Week here on the ESPN networks. I'm Kenny Rice, along with Hank Goldberg and Randy Moss. It takes 4 to 5 years going through the breeding process to the foaling process, selling and buying and getting them to the racetrack. But in the next hour, we're going to sum up these 3-year-olds as they get ready to run for the Roses. And this is the way the field looks at the moment. When you see the little yellow check, like with Lone Star Sky, that means there's still a possibility, but not locked in. We know Empire Maker and Peace Rules out of the powerful Frankel barns there. Calf Wayne is there, one of the horses trained by Bob Baffert. Buddy Gill has been a surprise. Scrimshaw just gets in. Wayne Lucas comes back. He's going to saddle his 40th Kentucky Derby horse. Also in there, Indian Express, maybe one of those up-and-coming, trained again by Bob Baffert. That's what I'm talking about, has the Hollywood connection. And then you see the last 3. They may or may not go. Probably the only thing we can say with certainty right now is that Empire Maker is the no doubt about it favorite. He did lose his first start of this year, finishing second at Santa Anita. Then he comes back, goes to the Florida Derby, adds blinkers, and look here, he romps at Gulfstream Park, winning by 9 3/4 lengths. Then he goes to New York.
Empire Maker in front. Still hand-ridden there by Jerry Bailey. Empire Maker is the leader. Funnyside running second. And then farther back, Kissing Saint coming through on the inside of New York Hero. Down to the finish. Empire Maker just a little nudge at the line to hold off the late challenge from Funnyside.
So he got the test there, but he won again, and he is strong. Hank, please allow me to throw out this stat. No millionaire has yet to win the Kentucky Derby. We have a millionaire in Empire Maker.
Well, I think that's a stat that's less related to performance when you consider inflation. All it takes is 2 Grade 1 wins, and basically you're at $1 million, and that's, of course, what Empire Maker has accomplished this year.
Empire Maker, so much talk about him, Randy. We've seen this before. You know, the great horse doesn't win the Kentucky Derby.
You saw it a couple of years ago with Point Given. I mean, Point Given looked like the type of horse that could win the Triple Crown, and he won 2/3 of the Triple Crown. But for whatever reason, on Kentucky Derby Day, he didn't show up, and he looked just as imposing on paper as Empire Maker does going into this year's race. But he's a legitimate favorite, let's face it. I mean, you have to really nitpick Empire Maker to find anything wrong with him. He's got the trainer, he's got the jockey, he's got the pedigree, 4 straight mile and 1/8 races, he's got the speed figure, steady pattern of improvement. The problem is the Kentucky Derby is not only the greatest race in the world, it's also one of the toughest races in the world to win.
Well, they haven't been at 1 1/4 miles, and they haven't faced this kind of traffic, and you can add about 2 or 3 other things to that.
Yeah, I don't think the competition's as tough for him this year as the 2 horses that Randy was referring to. He does have, I think, the best stakes rider in the world today in Jerry Bailey going for him, too.
Well, it's hard to knock Jerry Bailey, that's for sure. He's trying for his 3rd Kentucky Derby. Of course, Bailey knows Bobby Frankel well. After all, they keep bumping into each other at the Eclipse Awards and in winner's circles. Bobby was one of the reasons that he took a close look at Empire Maker, but when he started looking into that pedigree, that's when Jerry Bailey came aboard for a Triple Crown try.
Well, I mean, Bobby Frankel's had a lot to do with it, but at the very beginning, at least when I start looking for a horse, I look for breeding, and he's got plenty of that. You look for a horse that can go that far, because you'll see a lot of flash in the pans that look good going a mile and 1/16, 1/8, but really they get very weak after that. So the first thing I look for, and I think that his strongest suit is breeding.
In the Wood Memorial, describe when you're turning for home in that race, and he's getting a little tested. Certainly a lot different than the 9+ length victory in the Florida Derby. Bring us down the stretch as best you can remember that.
Well, I mean, my whole strategy in the race was to win, but win without taking a whole lot out of him. And he is a horse that has a propensity to look around, goof off, if you will, act kind of kiddish if he makes a lead and gets out there in front by himself. Knowing that in Florida, I hit him left-handed when I went by my last horse, and he went on about his business and won by 9 lengths. I didn't want to do that in the wood. I didn't want him opening up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lengths and winning and exerting a lot of energy 3 weeks before the Derby. So my plan was to win, but by as little margin as possible.
In a perfect world, how does this race unfold with you in the saddle on Empire Maker if you set it all out? Not necessarily particular horses to beat, but the pace. How does it all unfold if you could draw it right up right now?
You know, Kenny, it doesn't have to unfold a certain way for me. If there's a lot of pace, I'll be a little further behind. If there's not much pace, he'll be closer. A perfect scenario would be not getting shut off, not getting bumped around, but you really can't predict that at all. I don't even think post position is going to come into play a whole lot with him because he is, you know, so tractable now. I can put him just about wherever I want him.
And it's nice to have a horse that you can do that with.
You know, if he just stays sound and healthy, which it's got to happen to all of them if they're going to get the job done, I don't have any real worries or fears going into the Derby.
It sounds too good to be true, but if you stopped Jerry Bailey on the street, said, what do you think? He'd probably say the same thing.
Well, he told me before the Florida Derby, since they put the blinkers on Empire Maker, the horse has been very good in terms of being able for Jerry to be able to maneuver him, put him any place he wants to in the race, and he will respond. He complies very well. The other thing was that they did not want to overexert Empire Maker in the wood. I think Tom Durkin's call at the finish said it all when he called it just a little nudge when Jerry went to the stick. They want to save him for the rest of the Triple Crown. Bobby Frankel believes in the bounce theory where you don't want a horse to peak every race.
And of course, the favorite, it always just falls right into place for him, right, Randy, with, you know, 16, 18 horses out there.
Yeah, that's the biggest worry or fear, to use Jerry Bailey's term, that he or Bobby Frankel has right now. I mean, you've got a large field, you've got a lot of horses that want to stalk the pace, that want to sit up in the first flight. What happens if it's just unbelievably crowded going into the first turn? He's 7 wide around the first turn, or he gets bumped, shut off, checked on the back stretch or the second turn. It's the X factor with horses like this that you lose sleep the most about going into the Derby.
Well, this year, Empire Maker coming out of California. About everybody came out of California, and while all the leaves are green and the sky is blue this time of year, people are still California dreaming around racetracks across the country. California Jay Privman is so excited about it, he's already in Kentucky and joins us now. Jay?
Thanks, guys. I'll tell you, it's really great to be here in Kentucky. The sun is shining bright. And that's one of the things that we Californians like. We like being in the sunshine. You can train year-round. You're healthy. I mean, look at the guys back in the studio. Look how pasty-faced they are. I get to stand out here in the sun and get a tan. Look at the horses from California, how they've done this winter. Horses like Empire Maker, based in Southern California, but he goes to Florida, he wins the Florida Derby. He goes to New York, he wins the Wood Memorial. Peace Rules, based at Hollywood Park all winter, goes to Louisiana, wins the Louisiana Derby. Goes to Kentucky and wins the Bluegrass. 10 Most Wanted leaves Southern California to win the Illinois Derby. And then you've got the horses that are coming out of the Santa Anita Derby. Horses like Buddy Gill, Indian Express, Calf Lane, and that's what I'm talking about. This is going to be California's year to shine in the Kentucky Derby.
All right, Jay, I didn't think we looked that pasty.
Well, I didn't think Jay exactly looked like George Hamilton.
All right, ESPN Week at the Derby begins with Sports Center at the Kentucky Derby Draw Wednesday at 5 Eastern. Randy and Jeff Metters go 2 turns on Wire to Wire. A 1-hour show Thursday at 4 Eastern. Then you see the rest of the schedule with breakfast at Churchill Downs today at Churchill Downs, leading up Friday to the Kentucky Oaks, 5 Eastern. Randy and Hank will be there to handicap the Derby at 6 Eastern on ESPN2. And then Derby Day begins with breakfast at Churchill Downs today at the Kentucky Derby, leading up to the Kentucky Derby Special, and wrapping things up at 6:30 Eastern Time on ESPN2, a recap of Kentucky Derby 2003. Do you think we've got the point across that Bobby Frankel has the favorite in Empire Maker? Well, he also has another horse to not rule out. We'll take a look at some of the understudies who've done well on Derby Day.
This ESPN2 presentation of Citgo Racing to the Kentucky Derby is brought to you by Citgo. We know you. Visa, proud sponsor of the Visa Triple Crown. Budweiser, the best things in life are the things that are true. Budweiser. Long John Silver's, dive into something new. Kawasaki all-terrain and utility vehicles. Kawasaki, let the good times roll. NTRA.com, the official site of the NTRA and the Breeders' Cup World Thoroughbred Championships.
In the stretch, Brancusi comes after Peace Rules with a determined run at the 8th pole. It's 3 more lengths back to Awfully Wild, and then Crown Dancer on the outside is 4th. Final furlong of the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes, and Peace Rules awakens to the challenge of Brancusi. Awfully Wild is 3rd. Peace Rules will fight off all challengers today to take the Toyota Bluegrass by 2.5 lengths.
The 4th straight stakes victory, 3 of those graded in this stretch for Peace Rules, which would make him the star of any barn except the one that houses Empire Maker. But we've dusted off the old record books to see that sometimes the other guy, the forgotten guy, the understudy, does better on Derby Day, Randy.
It seems like it was just yesterday. Has it really been 46 years since Calumet Farms General Duke dropped out the day before the Derby with a lame foot? Calumet Farm won it anyway with their 3rd stringer Iron Lead. You look at 1919. Sir Barton was a 6-race maiden making his first start of the year. His stablemate Billy Kelly was 16 for 19, and yet Sir Barton won the race and went on to become racing's first Triple Crown winner.
Wow. 3 of those 4 there you saw in that stretch since '95 have come from the Lucas barn, 1 from the Baffert barn. With Peace Rules, is he determined enough? Will he get that 1.25 mile distance, you think, Hank, to be a serious contender here?
Well, there are some doubters. I wouldn't go off what happened in the Bluegrass, because winners of the Bluegrass are 0 for their last 11 in Kentucky Derbies. The reason being it's a speed-favoring, rail-favoring trip in that race, and this year they ran 1, 2, 3 all the way around the track. But Peace Rules is a very good horse. He's lightly raced. He's only had 2 races this year. But I go back to what Frankel said after he won the Louisiana Derby with Peace Rules, and he said, just wait till you see what I have for you next week. And, of course, next week was the Florida Derby and his star Empire Maker.
You think he's bluffing us a little bit on, sometimes Frankel kind of pulls back a little bit on Peace Rules, slides him in when he needs to in the conversation?
Well, obviously, Empire Maker's a better horse on paper than Peace Rules is. I mean, the big question about Peace Rules, as we've already alluded to, is his stamina, is his pedigree. I mean, he's by a sprinter. In each of his last 6 races, he's had a clear lead in mid-stretch. He's won 5 of those. The key to the Kentucky Derby for Peace Rules is going to be pace. If it's a really fast pace, he's in trouble. If it's a moderate pace like last year and he's sitting just behind it, then he's got a chance to get that 1.25 miles.
Well, he, of course, has 2 of the hottest trainers in the country, Bobby and Frankel. Of course, it's really only one person. He just seems to be everywhere. He is the first trainer to win in the same season the Florida Derby, the Louisiana Derby, the Bluegrass Stakes, and the Wood Memorial. He's a Hall of Fame trainer. So even though this is a big moment for him at Churchill Downs, he's approaching it like he would any big race.
Well, I'll probably be nervous, but I got pretty much of a game plan going in, and I got to leave it up to the horse. If he's good enough, he'll do it. If he's not, he won't. It's simple as that. I'm not going to put any added pressure on myself, thinking how I'm going to train him. I already figured that out already, so it shouldn't be too bad a week. As long as he comes into the race, everything goes right, I should be in decent shape.
Bobby, you've won about everything there is to win in racing, except a Triple Crown race or a Kentucky Derby, of course. You came close 3 years ago with Aptitude. Some might look at this as your holy grail that you're chasing.
Well, this looks like might be my best chance I'll ever have, you know, but if you win, you win, you lose, you lose. There's nothing I can do about it. Like I said, I got all my plans. The horse is in good shape. I got 2 horses. We can't forget about the other horse. He's in good, and they're both, knock on wood, very, very sound. And hopefully everything goes right this week, and we'll leave it up to the horses to do the talking.
Speaking of Peace Rules, you've won the Louisiana Derby, the Bluegrass Stakes with him. He's on this great streak. Normally, that would make him the favorite, but he has Empire Maker as a stablemate, so sometimes people overlook him. Sometimes people question the distance. How's he doing getting ready for this?
Oh, he's always trains really well. He's a very, like Empire Maker is like a kid growing up, and this horse is just a hard trying, knows what he's doing all the time, and you know, he'll look like you can get by him, but once you get to him, it'll be tough getting by him. So I think on his guts alone, he'll get the distance, because he's rating kindly now and stuff like that. So he's just a hard trying horse, which who knows, he will upset them all.
Empire Maker actually lost the first of the season. Some people may have forgotten that, but you add blinkers before the Florida Derby, and then he wins that one, is tested, and then he goes on and he wins the one.
Well, he's just a big, strong colt, and he won first time out, and I never really put pressure on him to show a lot of speed in his races. And the second and third start, he probably could have had blinkers put on him, but we didn't do it yet. And the thing that makes me feel good about him is he broke really well the other day. He was good in the gate, and the other day he was the best he's ever been in the paddock, so he's come a long way.
I know you'd rather train horses, but you know you got to do a lot of interviews this week. People around the country want to know, is he the next great one? I mean, and they want to make him a star. I don't want to sound like an NTRA commercial, but, you know, that's coming.
No, I hope he is the star, you know, because like you said, you need it, but it's still horse racing, and I've been disappointed so many times in this business, so... you know, I'm just, like I said, I'm just hoping he is the star and he doesn't disappoint me.
Well, he is the star, but Peace Rules, he's had the most trouble of any of the races so far, hasn't he, Randy? Going back to the Bluegrass.
We talk about some of the things that can go wrong in a horse race. Among the things that you don't expect to go wrong is the saddle to slip. And Hank, you can see on the rail there, that is Edgar Prado on Peace Rules, and as they turn down the backstretch, if you watch Edgar Prado's feet, you can see a little difference there with some of the other jockeys in the race.
Yeah, it's clear what's happening there, and look at how concentrated the effort is on the part of the horse, though.
Yeah, well, you can see Prado's feet right now. They're way up on Peace Rules' neck, and compare that to the other riders in the race whose feet seem pretty still and they're back in the middle of the saddle towel. Yet Peace Rules still managed to go wire to wire. In fact, that might have helped him win because he just went right onto the lead on a speed-favoring racetrack.
You know, guys, for Bobby Frankel to not have a Kentucky Derby is kind of like Dan Marino retiring without a Super Bowl, which unfortunately happened for Dan. So yeah, I've got a little bit of a root going for Frankel here.
Well, certainly Bobby Frankel is going to be answering the most questions over the next few days leading up to the Derby, but we have discovered, this just in, there's other horses in the race. Most of them coming out of the Santa Anita Derby, it seems like. Buddy Gill, that's what I'm talking about. Indian Express and Calf Wayne out of Baffert's Barn. All of those West Coast guys next.
Citgo Racing to the Kentucky Derby. The Triple Crown Special is presented by Visa.
Buddy Gill is the one they have to catch. Indian Express running a huge one down at the rail. Calf Wayne, that's what I'm talking about. Not quite doing enough. Here comes Indian Express back in the rail. Buddy Gill, Indian Express, Buddy Gill, a nose to Indian Express. Calf Wayne third, that's what I'm talking about, was fourth.
Welcome back. Buddy Gill is the best in the West, at least the best who has stayed based in the West, winning 3 straight graded stakes, the last 2 in photo finishes. But is Buddy Gill the real deal as we get ready for the Derby?
Well, there's nothing to knock on his performances at Santa Anita. You wonder what he's going to do now that he's going to another track. And his trainer, Jeff Mullins, was a 34% winner at that racetrack at the time that Buddy Gill won the Santa Anita Derby. So he had the benefit of a very hot trainer going for him at the time, too.
Yeah, it's hard to knock the fact, like you say, that he won both those races. If you throw out a couple of muddy track races, he's actually won 5 in a row. But I think when you hear people knock him, what they're talking about is in the San Felipe, he got to the wire first, but if the race had been, you know, 50 yards longer, that's what I'm talking about, would have blown his doors off. In the Santa Anita Derby, Indian Express ran a better race in defeat, given the pace of that race, which was incredibly fast, than Buddy Gill actually did in winning the race. So I think that's kind of what people are talking about.
Buddy Gill is perfect so far in his big races out west, though. Coming into this one, he has the jockey in Gary Stevens, who has won the Kentucky Derby 3 times. He was in earlier in the week to work Buddy Gill at Churchill Downs, and he says that this Derby contender reminds him of one of his Derby winners.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Silver Charm with his will to win. I mean, it's almost a feeling that he refuses to lose. Once he gets his head in front, he's going to gut it out. He's going to find something extra. He had a little dirt get down his trachea in the Santa Anita Derby, had a little bleeding episode, and I was disappointed with the way that he finished up in the Santa Anita Derby. And when I pulled him up, he immediately started coughing, and then I wasn't as disappointed. I was very happy with the way that he fought on. I mean, most horses would have just pulled themselves up with what he was going through, and and he gutted it out, and he showed me a toughness that makes champions.
Well, he is going against history because the last time that a gelding won the Kentucky Derby was Clyde Van Dusen back in 1929.
How would you like to be Clyde Van Dusen, be the poster boy for being neutered?
What's even worse is the trainer was also named Clyde Van Dusen. Figure explain that sometime.
I can't explain the other parts.
Well, Randy, as far as guts and determination and all those cliches, I guess sometimes you just can't measure that till they get out there and you can see if they can get that added distance.
It was kind of ironic when Stevens was talking about that, because I was just thinking before he said that, you know, with 17, 18 horses in the field, just imagine how much dirt in the trachea a lot of these horses are going to wind up with, you know. You know, that's something that you really don't need to be thinking too much about, but obviously Buddy Gill has shown that he does have at least the will to win, and that's a plus, definitely.
One thing you have to think about at the Derby is when Bob Baffert shows up. He has the longest active streak among trainers now. This will be his 8th straight Derby. He's won 3 of them, of course, including last year. And here you see, working out earlier this week, Indian Express and Calf Wayne, his 2 trying this time.
You know, Indian Express has only been raced 4 times. I think horses with 4 or less races, in fact, I know this, are 0-for-32 in a Kentucky Derby. But you could look at this horse differently in that this was only his 2nd race this year, and the improvement that he showed going 1 1/8. You wonder if he can make the 1 1/4 distance. That Indian Charlie, his daddy, came in favored, of course, also with 4 races, and he wound up running 3rd.
The Baffert factor always there, Randy, when he shows up. I think after the 20-to-1 shot last year, everybody's looking no matter who he's sending out there.
Well, I think there are some similarities between Indian Express and a couple of other Baffert horses. I mean, Gary Stevens invoked Silver Charm for Buddy Gill. I would invoke Silver Charm for Indian Express, because Silver Charm in his Kentucky Derby in '97 was right up on the pace, very hot fractions in the Santa Anita Derby, held tough, was just beaten at the wire by Freehouse. This horse ran the same kind of a race. And also War Emblem, because War Emblem got a clear lead last year, and look what he did. And there's a definite possibility, a real danger, that Indian Express is going to control the pace here.
Well, that's what Baffert wants Tyler Bays to do. He said, he's told him already, just go with him, take him as far as he can go.
Well, as far as we can go right now is back to Churchill Downs, where Jay Pribman is going to get it right from the mouth of the man who's won the Derby 3 times. Let's go to Jay and Bob Baffert.
Bob Baffert won the Kentucky Derby last year, giving him 3 Kentucky Derby wins in the last 6 years. Back for more again this year. And Bob, you've got a couple of horses who are probably getting a little bit overlooked, but that doesn't really seem to bother you because you got overlooked last year and you ended up in the winner's circle. The horse you won with last year was War Emblem. This year, Indian Express, to me, seems like a fairly similar horse, that they've got the same front-running style. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, I mean, War Emblem was a much quicker, faster horse than Indian Express. Indian Express is probably, he has like one speed, like a high cruising speed, where I think War Emblem was more of an explosive kind of horse. But the only difference is, if War Emblem, if a horse came to him and hooked him, he wouldn't really cough it up. He would just get mad, and he would quit running. And he was just, that's the way he was. Sort of a hateful horse, but he was mean and get mad. Where this horse is like, looks like when he gets hooked or they go by him, he comes back with that steady speed. He just wears you down. So I think his Santa Anita Derby race was quite impressive. The way he ran, he was passed and came back on, almost won. So he showed me there that there is a lot of talent there. It's just he's getting to that point, and so far he's progressed forward, which you want to see that in a horse right now. You want to see a horse getting better as the days go by, and he's really changed so much just the last 45 days. So you know, he does have a legitimate, might be definitely long shot, but legitimate chance to get a piece of the pie.
Now, Calf Wayne is the most experienced horse in this field this year with the number of starts that he's had. He's a horse, though, that had a little bit of a setback after the Santa Anita Derby, got a little bit sick on you. How's he done now coming up to the Kentucky Derby in light of that?
Well, I lost some time. I really think he wasn't feeling well when he ran the Santa Anita Derby. He was very quiet that day, and he came up with a little low-grade infection, had 103 the next day, so he must have had like a bug he was fighting off, and luckily he didn't get very, very sick, but I still missed 9 days with him, gave him plenty of time. Got a little bit behind, but he's the kind of horse, he's run so much, and he's got a great foundation on him. He's got a lot of races, so he really doesn't need the practice. I just got to get his lungs pumped back up, and I think that work brought us back up to speed.
One other thing about Calf Wayne, and I'll own up to this myself, a lot of people think that the Derby distance of 1 1/4 might be a little bit beyond his range. How do you think he'll do handling 10 furlongs?
I think it's a lot of out of range for a lot of the horses, the majority of the field. So I think we're all in the same boat. So it's whoever has the biggest heart. And one thing about Kefuan, he has showed us he has a huge heart. So I think his heart will get him that extra distance.
Yeah, one thing we've grown to admire about Kefuan is that he really does put it all together in the afternoon. That's Bob Baffert. He'll be looking for victory number 4 in the Kentucky Derby next weekend.
All right, thanks, Jay and Bob. And yeah, we talk about that heart again, especially after watching the workout earlier with Indian Express and Kefuan.
Yeah, I think workouts are pretty overrated by as a handicapping factor by the general public. And I think you need to point out, we saw that workout, and you saw how much harder Kefuan was having to work. He was being asked to run in that workout, but he was also carrying 20 pounds more than the other horse, about 20 pounds, I'm estimating there. And also, he'd missed some training time, as Bob Baffert said. So you got to take those things into consideration.
You know, with Baffert there and Lucas there and everybody there, though, guys, I'm telling you, the horse that's going to get the most attention in the paddock if one of his owners show up is That's What I'm Talking About, owned by, among others, Academy Award winner Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, this horse disappointed in the Santa Anita Derby. He was running against a blistering pace, and yet he couldn't really make up ground in the stretch. And going 1 1/8 for the first time, you're not sure if he's like a horse who sometimes closes well as a sprinter, but the further he goes, he doesn't show that closing ability. Another factor about him is that they've really pushed him to try to get him ready for the Kentucky Derby. And I'm not sure that he hasn't had a little bit taken out of him because of the schedule that he's been on this spring.
And he's certainly got the publicity. He does have the breeding, and yeah, you wonder, has he been pushed too much? Will he be ready?
Well, for whatever reason, in the Santa Anita Derby, it was set up for him to run very well, and he didn't. He didn't take that next step. Buddy Gill showed some improvement and moved up a little bit. That's what I'm talking about, just sort of stayed at the same level. And for that reason, I think there's some big question marks about him in Kentucky.
Well, there's always memories, no matter what happens this Kentucky Derby, that we'll be looking back on. It's time now for our silver memory, presented by Long John Silver's. And for that, let's take you back to 1978 and affirmed on his way to becoming the 11th horse ever to win the Triple Crown. Taking the Kentucky Derby in the Preakness and running second to him all the way was Alydar in the greatest Triple Crown rivalry ever. And then it all built up to affirmed in Alydar once again in the Belmont.
It's Alydar and Affirmed battling back along the inside. We'll test these two to the wire. Affirmed under a left-hand whip. Alydar on the outside driving. Affirmed and Alydar heads apart. Affirmed's got a nose in front as they come onto the wire.
1978 Triple Crown winner, the last Triple Crown winner 25 years ago, Affirmed. Last year, War Emblem came through Illinois to win the Roses. Who's the wanted one coming out of there now? We'll tell you when we return to our Triple Crown special.
Here comes 10 Most Wanted charging up in second. Cherokee's Boy third. Alley Sweep dropping back fourth. Lone Star Sky fifth. And here comes 10 Most Wanted on the outside. And 10 Most Wanted and Pente run to the lead and draw away. Here's the wire. 10 Most Wanted. 10 Most Wanted won it by 3.
It worked for War Emblem last year. Will it work for 10 Most Wanted coming through the Illinois Derby? He has posted the second fastest of the Beyer speed figures, as you can see in the daily racing form, around 2 turns, tied with Funny Side, who got his 1:10 running second to Empire Maker in the Wood. Now, that doesn't mean that the fastest Beyer is the one that wins the race always, but it worked last year for War Emblem. And coming into this one, 10 Most Wanted with his run in the Illinois Derby. How'd that impress you, Hank?
Very much so. When he ran in the El Camino Real Derby at Bay Meadows up in San Francisco, he didn't really